Welcome.
Welcome. We are
Got
back.
a
Macaroni.
Oh,
special guest here. Good old Pentyworth. We've had a few of
Hello
his
there.
stories in our channel.
yeah, he's an avid contributor to this channel. He gives us lots of nice stories to read. Penty, say hi.
Oh, there, party people.
Today we're doing another group read here, so we're just gonna go as we do usually. Um, what is the story? We're reading My Best Friend Watched Me Climb into a Well. He's the one who never came out. Today.
It's by Extra Evening 9354. Bit of a longer one,
Yeah,
I'd say.
I don't know much about it. We talked to the guy and he seemed like a cool guy, so we're excited to read it.
It was like a
Um,
month ago though.
You're not supposed to say that, bro. God.
Jesus.
Other
Jeez,
stories.
man, you're making us look bad.
Hey, can't be perfect.
All right, I'm gonna let Ben dive in here. Oh, sushi's coming back to bite me, bro. Hang on.
Told you you'd have the sushi
All
burps.
Fish is fighting back.
right, I'll let Ben dive in here.
I was a socially awkward kid, the kind who ate lunch away from everyone and rarely said a word. Making friends seemed like something everyone but me could do, until I met Seth. We were at high school, and I happened to hear him talking about the new game his mom bought him. It was a game I happened to be really into, so I jumped into the conversation before I could talk myself out of it. We bonded over our love of the game, and he invited me over. We've been best friends ever since. Seth and I spent most of our summers talking about things we'd never actually do. We made big plans and never followed through, but one day, we decided we were really going to build a treehouse. After convincing both our parents, all that was left was finding the right spot. Behind Seth's house was a dense pine forest, so that was the obvious choice. We searched for about half an hour through the humid, sticky air. Trees of all shapes and sizes surrounded us as the crickets and birds sang. Eventually, we stumbled into a clearing. It looked almost too perfect. A circle, maybe 50 or 70 feet across. Right in the center stood an old stone well, nearly swallowed by moss. The moss was reminiscent of a giant snake, slithering its way up and down the well. The moment I saw it, I felt something shift. Not fear exactly, but a pull, like it had been waiting for us. "Dude, this is perfect," he said, walking up to the well as if it was another blade of grass. "We can build the treehouse over there, away from the creepy stone thing." I wasn't looking at the tree line, though. I was still staring at the well. Seth kept rambling about treehouse ideas, but I kept drifting toward the well. As I got closer, I noticed the stone around the rim had been chiseled in a ripple pattern that spread red toward the waterhole. The well was about 10 feet deep before dropping off into an even darker pit. I almost missed it, but as I stared at the far wall, transfixed, I saw something. There, on a narrow ledge of dirt jutting from the inner wall, sat a single black dahlia. I don't even know what that is. Dahlia.
Dahlia.
Travis, dahlia. What is that? Do you know what that is?
It's a flower.
Oh, okay.
I was like, "Hey there, Delilah." You know what I mean?
Uh, oh, Okay, yeah.
Definitely.
Travis. Travis, what are you doing? Seth's voice broke me from the trance as I staggered backwards. I was just looking at this well. It's beautiful. The well is beautiful? Yeah. Seth gave a short laugh, but it didn't sound amused. Kinda freaking me out, man. Are you getting enough sleep? Yeah, I said, not even sure if I snapped out of my trance. I'm fine. Seth walked up to me and looked at the well. Is there anything down there? Nothing really, just a flower and water. Seth walked closer and peeked into the hole. What flower? I blinked. The flower was gone. Not fallen. Gone. No trace of it on the stones below. No sign of it ever being there at all. I didn't answer him. My eyes were still locked on the place where it had been. My skin crawled.
Let's just go back to your place. We can do this tomorrow. You're not looking so good. I nodded. Still not fully looking away from the well. It felt like turning your back on something you're not sure is real. Or worse, something you were sure was. We walked back to my house in near silence, occasionally breaking it to point out an animal or make some half-hearted comment about the woods. The summer heat was still heavy, but it was suddenly a lot less noticeable. The trees whispered above us, branches swaying as the wind blew across them. The air felt different. Not colder or thicker, but wrong. Like something had shifted in the clearing. Something I couldn't name, let alone understand. When we got to my place, I told my mom I wasn't feeling well. She offered me some soup and ginger ale, but I declined. Why would you decline that? The fuck?
I was gonna say, that sounds awesome.
I want soup and ginger ale.
Sounds perfect.
My room was familiar. Posters on the wall, controller wires tangled together on the carpet, a ceiling fan clicking with every rotation, but I couldn't settle. My mind kept circling back to the well, the flower, the way it vanished, like it had never existed at all. Seth booted up Mortal Kombat and handed me a controller. I lost every match we played. Shitter. I couldn't focus. I felt anguish. I felt
Anxious.
anxious.
Angus.
It's that sushi talking to me.
It is.
Like I was being watched. That night, I dreamt of the clearing and the well. The sky was gray and dreary, and the forest was covered in shadows. I looked around and I saw nothing strange, so I just started walking towards the well. As I approached it, black, thorny vines started slithering out of the well and approaching me. I tried to run, but the vines came up from the ground and wrapped around my feet. I was stuck in place as the vines started to wrap around me, cutting into my flesh. Hundreds of thorns picked into me as I collapsed into a bed of vines. The vines slowly made their way up to my body. I screamed as thorns tore through my skin, sharp and endless. I thrashed and struggled, but it only pushed them deeper into me. I eventually gave up, tears rolling down my face as I accepted my fate. Right before I was completely swallowed by the vines, I saw something. A silhouette behind the tree line. Human-like in shape. There was something off about it, though. I stared at it as the vines slowly engulfed my entire body. I jolted upright, chest heaving, heart slamming against my ribs. It took minutes to steady my breath, to remind myself I was safe. I grounded myself, counting each breath until I felt stable again. As I got out of bed, I looked around my room. Nothing was out of the ordinary, and there was nothing going on. I let out a sigh of relief before turning around. What I saw still haunts me. Sitting right there on the outside of my window was a single black dahlia. I opened my window, heart still pounding from the nightmare. The flower was still there. I reached out and grabbed it, my fingers brushing the petals. And I felt dizzy. My knees buckled slightly as I placed the flower on my nightstand and sat back down. I took a deep breath until the black dots faded from my vision. When I stood up again, the flower was gone. Not wilted or on the floor, just gone. My heart sank. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe the heat had gotten to me yesterday and now my brain was playing tricks. I told myself that over and over as I got dressed, trying to believe it. I called Seth. We agreed to hang out at his place that afternoon.
Until then, I just lay around the house, trying not to think about the well, about the flower, about the way it vanished right in front of us. Oh, sorry, in front of me. Again. As time passed, I looked at the clock, 10:07. I sighed heavily as I waited for time to pass. It felt like maybe 10 minutes had passed. When I looked again, it was 11:02. I was confused. How had so much time passed in what felt like a moment? As 12 o'clock approached, I got my shoes on and got ready to leave. As I was about to walk out, I saw my cat, King, eating out of his food bowl. I walked up to him to try to pet him. Jesus Christ. But his tail raised up. As he slowly backed away, he hissed repeatedly before running away incredibly fast.
That cat's an asshole.
Yeah, for real. I had known King since he was a kitten. He'd never hissed at me before. Not even when I'd accidentally stepped on his tail. I stared down the hallway that King had vanished in. There was a shadow, a black figure, that dragged something behind it as it disappeared into the darkness. I tried to shake it off, and as I walked out the front door, the sky was cold and gray. When I stepped outside, by the time I crossed the street, drizzle had turned into downpour. Then thunder cracked, low and heavy, and rain fell in sheets. I walked into Seth's house soaked to the bone, water dripping from my sleeves. I shivered as I climbed the stairs, only stopping to wave at his mom, who was making her famous French onion soup. Soup. He laughed when I stepped into his room and tossed me a towel. "You look like you got hit by a wave," he said. I forced a smile and started drying off. The weather hates me, what can I say? I peeled off my coat, letting it hit the floor with a wet flop. I think this thing's done for. Seth slid onto his bed, further onto his bed, getting comfortable. "You've had that coat since what, 6th grade? Just burn it already. Put it out of its misery." "I can't. Sentimental." "Dude, it smells like that well water from yesterday." I tried to laugh, but it came out thin. "I'm surprised Mom even let you in the house looking like that. She offered soup." I said no. "Dude, you turned down my mom's soup? You're actually crazy."
Damn.
"Maybe." He raised an eyebrow. "I don't know. I didn't sleep much." "Nightmares?" I hesitated. "Sort of." "About that well it freaked you out?" "About what was in the well." He didn't respond instantly. He just looked at me for a second, longer than usual, and then handed me the game controller.
Nightmares are weird, man. Try not to think about it too much. What you should think about is who you're going to play while you lose like 10 times in a row. I tried to shake it off and sat across from him while he started navigating the menu, talking about new combos he discovered. I wasn't really listening, though. I was letting my attention wander around the room. It was all familiar. Posters we'd both picked out, a bookshelf full of comics we collected, and on top sat photos of summers and birthdays gone. One picture caught my eye. It was us, maybe 10 or 11, standing in his backyard. I remember that day. Water balloons, grilled hot dogs, the rusty old trampoline with a few broken springs, but something was off. The background looked darker than it should have. The trees behind us, too many. Thicker, tangled, and near my leg, in the bottom corner of the frame, I saw something I didn't remember. A line of black, like vines creeping through the grass. I leaned closer. One of the vines curled upward, almost touching my ankle. "Hey Seth," I said, my voice low. "When was this picture taken?" I'm not sure. Years ago." "You need to see this." I walked over and held the frame up to his face. She took it and glanced down, then back at me. "What's the big deal? This looks fine." I blinked. The vines were still there, plain as day. You don't see those thorny vines?" His brow furrowed. "What are you talking about? I don't see anything, man. Maybe you're just, still wound up from yesterday." "Telling you those vines?" Seth hesitated for a moment. "No, and you're kind of freaking me out." I opened my mouth, closed it, then stared at the frame again. The vines were still there, crawling, twisting, almost reaching me. Why couldn't he see them? "I had a dream last night," I said, the words fumbling out of my mouth faster than I had intended. The well was there, the flower, black vines, these vines coming out of the ground, wrapping around me, cutting into me. Seth stayed silent, expression on his face still as I talked. They had sharp thorns. I couldn't move, I couldn't breathe. They squeezed tighter as they moved higher up my body, and right before they covered my face, I looked up at him. There was something in the trees, watching. Seth shifted in the bed as he spoke. "Okay, maybe you need to And this morning," I interrupted, "there was a black flower sitting on my window ledge." I held his gaze and he looked at me, confused. It disappeared. Twice. Seth exhaled slowly while rubbing the back of his neck.
You really didn't get much sleep last night, did you? I didn't respond. I just stared at the photo. The vines seemingly got longer with each glance I took. Maybe we shouldn't go back there, he added. That's when I stood up. No, we have to. What? I need to see it again. The well, the clearing, all of it. Dude, why? Because I'm not crazy. I snapped back. Or, if I am, I need to know for sure, Seth stood up. Think about what you're saying. If the well really is what you think it is, then there's no point in going straight to it. I opened my mouth to argue. Nothing came out. He wasn't wrong. Not exactly. So, what do? I asked. Start small, he said. You want to know what it is? Then figure out where it came from first. I looked at the photo again, the vines still twisting toward my leg. I knew what I saw. Fine, I muttered. But I'm not letting this go. I didn't argue, not out loud. But even as we sat back down and the game flickered on, my thoughts kept circling. The dream, the flower, the vines crawling into the photograph like they belonged there. Seth couldn't see them, but I could, and I didn't care if it meant I was losing it. I had to know why. I left an hour later, walking home under the dull gray sky, the wind pushing dead leaves into the street. The clearing was off limits for now, but maybe there was another way to get answers. When I got home, out my laptop, typed Old Stone Well, Pinewood Forest, and hit enter. And there it was, on the first page. The Mouth of Dahlia. Urban Legends and Vanishing Boys. I stared at the blue website name, scared to click on it. The page loaded slowly. It looked like a blog. Goddamn.
The sushi's getting you.
Dude.
Sam is fighting back.
There we go. Basic white background. Outdated fonts. Barely readable. The article was dated 2009. Hidden deep in sits a moss-covered, well-known to some locals as the Mouth of Dahlia. It talked about disappearances, 3 boys in the 40s, a hiking group in the 78, another kid in the 90s, no bodies, no signs, just a black flower found near where they vanished. I kept scrolling. Some believe the wall isn't a structure, but a living thing, a mouth that feeds on people, a boundary between our world and something older. Others claim the well to be a portal to hell, or an otherworldly plane. My stomach turned. A figure in the trees. Dreams. The flower. The flower doesn't grow naturally in this region, but it keeps appearing. Those who see it never forget.
I sat back in my chair, hands clammy. I wasn't crazy or delusional. I was being haunted. It wasn't just a nightmare anymore. I had seen that flower, and now I knew its name. Sorry about that. I couldn't sleep that night. I keep seeing the flower every time I close my eyes. By morning, I'd memorized the article, but it wasn't enough. I needed something older, something real. The local library opened at 10. I was waiting outside by 9:45. I was at the library when the doors opened. No sleep, no appetite, just a buzzing need to know. The reference section smelled like dust and forgotten things. The librarian barely looked up when I asked about Pinewood's history. Just pointed towards the shelf marked local archives. Most of the books looked untouched. Brown covers, warped spines, handwritten call numbers, and faded ink. I scanned titles until one caught my eye. Structures of significant settlements and monuments of Pinewood County. Pulled down and flipped through yellowing pages until I found the section labeled the Dahlia Well. constructed in 1885 by Harold, a local stoneworker. The well was originally intended to supply water to the southern edge of what was known as Millet Farm. It was named after his wife Dahlia, whose favorite flower inspired both the name and the carved vine motifs, still visible on the structure today. I paused. Vines? According to local accounts, Dahlia died under unclear circumstances shortly after the well was completed.
Uh-oh.
That's not good. After her death, strange reports began circulating: missing animals, inexplicable dreams, and sightings of a woman in black near the forest edge. Though never confirmed, these incidents led some to believe Dahlia's spirit had become bound to the well, either by grief or by something darker. There was no conclusion, no resolution, just a final line. While skeptics dismiss these tales as rural superstition, the well has remained a source of quiet fascination and quiet fear for over a century. I closed the book slowly, my fingers tight around the cover. The carving, the dreams, the flower. Maybe it was just a story, but maybe she was still out there. I walked out of the library in the hot hours of the afternoon. The cloud parting and sun shining reminded me of what life was like before the well. I should have felt comforted by the warmth, but I didn't. The air felt too bright, like the world had overcorrected. Everything was golden and gleaming, too clean, too alive. I blinked into the sunlight, and for a second, I felt like I was looking at something I didn't belong in anymore. People walked past me without noticing, laughing, talking, chewing on the ends of iced coffee straws, and complaining about the heat. I wondered if they'd ever seen the flower. Jesus. If they'd remembered that they had, or maybe I was the only person to feel this way. I didn't go home. Walked. No direction. In mind, I passed the broken street lamp with a vine coiled around it. One of the leaves looked different, almost shaped like a mouth. I stopped walking. I took a photo, zoomed in. It was just a leaf. But no. Was it?
When I got home, I laid everything out. Notes, printouts, hand-drawn maps I had made. I circled the location of the well, my house, and the street lamp. I drew a line, then another. The intersections didn't mean anything yet, but something in my bones said they would. I stood back, looked at the angles, measured distances with a ruler I hadn't touched in forever. Paper didn't give answers, but it started to hum. Not literally, not out loud, just beneath the surface of the silence, like the house itself was listening. That's when I remembered the archive box. Last week, tucked in a back room of the library, there had been a stack of unlabeled cartons, donated by the first Presbyterian church when they'd cleared out their basement. Most were full of hymns and yellowed bulletins, but one had older material. Parish logs, burial certificates, handwritten sermon notes. I'd flipped through it without care. It wasn't catalogued, not even alphabetized. I'd only opened it because the box was broken and sagging at the corners. There'd been a letter inside, folded between two brittle sheets of cemetery record. I don't remember reading the whole thing at the time, just the date, the name of the author, and the strange scrawl of handwriting, like he'd written it with a broken nail. I only Jesus, I'm struggling right now. I only brought it home because it looked out of place, an instinct. Or maybe the well had already started nudging. Now it was on the table, waiting. I unfolded the page and read the letter in full for the first time. 14th August, 1872. Rectory of St. Bellamy's Parish, Crook Hollows, County Wexford. To whomever should By providence or misfortune, come upon this missive, I write not as a man of sound standing, but as one, by knowledge that ought never have been touched. I've seen a thing which the earth has no name for. The villagers speak of a woman. They say her spirit lingers in the old well, that her sorrow poisons the ground, that she hungers for company. I have heard the tales, and I tell you now, they are wrong. The well is not haunted. It is. I have stood upon its stones, and felt a warmth rise that is not the sun's doing. I have looked into its depths, and dreamed things I do not believe were ever mine to dream. Prayers spoken near it echo strangely, as though some other mouth repeats them with a voice just slightly. Behind my own, or slightly behind my own, it listens. I have seen vines grow in spirals that mimic the shapes I later found. I am watched. I am used. I have tried all rites known to me. Salt, fire, the blessing of the ground, the breaking of stone. It returns. It always returns. I dare not speak of this to the bishop. Let them think me mad. Perhaps I am, but if you are reading this, if this letter still breathes in your hand, then it is not yet satisfied. It waits. Do not trace its paths. Do not name it, and above all, for Elias?
For Elias?
For Elias?
I don't know.
Hmm.
That kind of creeped me out. I'm not gonna lie, that was pretty good.
It's pretty good.
Yeah.
I read the letter once, then again, then again. I tried not to assign meaning to the parts I couldn't read, but that only made them louder. I filled in the gaps with instinct, with memory, with my own thoughts. I didn't write anything down, but I started repeating certain phrases in my head, over and over. It is not haunted, it listens, do not name it. At first I told myself it was historical context, just context, that's all. But I knew better, I felt better. This wasn't a coincidence, this wasn't superstition. The priest had seen the vines too. He felt that same wrong warmth. He'd drawn something or dreamed something or spoken words that didn't sound like his own. And now he's gone. Just a cracked letter, buried in the wrong box. Misfiled in the basement. Misfiled in the basement of a library where no one ever looked. I laid it out beside my maps. Then, ones I'd drawn. I looked at the spirals again. I didn't remember drawing them, either. Not consciously, but they were repeating across 3 separate pages. The lines converged near the well, but more than that, they grew. Each time, the spirals were longer, thicker, as if they were spreading. I pulled the light closer and started sketching again, carefully. No ruler, no measuring, just my hand. It felt natural, almost like copying. When I blinked, it was almost dark. I hadn't eaten. My phone buzzed. 4 unread texts. Missed call, low battery. I didn't answer. I barely registered the names. Instead, I turned the priest's letter over. Nothing written. But the paper was warped, stained in one corner like it had been held too tightly in a damp palm. I touched the spot, cold. That night, I dreamt of the well, but not like before, not a memory, not something I couldn't rationalize. Later, as a reconstruction, the dream was inside the well. There was no light, no ground, no sky. Just slow movement, like being suspended in something thick. Something not water, something that labored up and down in a near perfect rhythm. Then a voice, not loud, not sharp, a whisper, just near the edge of my ear. As I thought it were spoken from within me, it's waiting for you. The morning after the dream, I found a crack in the living room wall. I started near the ceiling and curved downward. Not jagged, not haphazard. It curled, a wide, deliberate arc, looping once like something hand-drawn. like something I'd drawn. I didn't touch it. I didn't even go near it. Just stared at the shape for a while, half expecting it to keep growing right in front of me. When I blinked and I looked again, it was just a crack. Drywall split from heat or pressure or old age, but I could swear it hadn't been there the day before. I could swear it was growing. I got a pencil and sketched the shape in my notebook. That was the first entry by the end of the week. I'd fill 4 pages with notes. Strange sights, small sounds, shapes that reappeared in places they didn't belong. There was a vine outside the bathroom window, coiled in the same spiral I'd drawn on one of the maps. Dust gathered in the corner of the kitchen that looked, if I stared too long, like the shape of a mouth.
Floorboard near the hallway seemed to pulse, just slightly, like something was breathing under it. Sometimes I felt it at night when I walked barefoot to the kitchen. The house began creaking at odd hours, but never the usual kind. This wasn't a random shift of old wooden heat. This was rhythmic, intentional, like footsteps or a slow drag of something heavy just beneath the floor. I started writing down everything, not because I thought it would help me understand, because I was afraid that if I didn't, I'd start forgetting what was real. Some nights I'd wake up, not knowing if the dream had ended. Other times, I'd be completely awake and hear things I couldn't place, low, scraping sounds, like something clawing at the pipes. Something was clawing at the pipes. Had a stroke there.
It's fine.
The voice came back too. It was in dreams at first. A woman's voice. Soft, urgent, whispering close enough I felt the warmth of breath on the back of my neck. She said things like, deeper. Jesus Christ. She said things like deeper or closer. Or you should have seen it already. Or Jesus Christ, I had
Damn.
wow guys. You've already seen it. She never shouted. She never begged.
That was an oddly sexual paragraph.
Yeah, a little
Yeah,
bit.
that was
I'm
a little
struggling
sexual.
here.
Little did you know
Just
this
said
was
those
all a
things
sexual
again.
fantasy story. It's a little,
Yeah, I mean, this very well could be.
you never know.
Uh-oh.
It's already.
Just said those things
Never mind, I'm
again.
not gonna say
Oh,
that.
you're good, you're good.
Sorry, no, you keep going. That's my bad. I was gonna say something gross, anyways. I'm not gonna say that.
Ah.
Hey, listen. We've all been there. She never begged. Just said those things again and again until I woke up soaked in sweat, heart pounding, unsure whether I'd screamed. Eventually, I stopped trying to sleep. The cracks were in every room now. Most are small, just hairline fractures, but some had started curling into distinct shapes, spirals mostly. I measured a few of them and compared them to the ones I'd drawn in my earliest sketches. They matched exactly. Same size, same curve, even the same direction. That shouldn't have been possible. I hadn't used a compass or ruler for any of them. They were just instinctive drawings, but something about them was being mirrored in the house itself. Sometimes I could hear the voice during the day too, not just in dreams, whispered just low enough that I couldn't catch every word. I wrote those down too, sometimes just fragments. It's hungry. We remember. You're close. He failed. And once, just once. Don't leave. One night while going through the pages again, I remembered something from the archive box, buried beneath the priest's letter and the church's logs. There had been a bundle of handwritten sermon drafts, most of them incomprehensible. But one of them had different handwriting and included diagrams, badly drawn circles, strange patterns, and Latin phrases scribbled in the margins. At the time, I dismissed it as nonsense, but now I found myself digging through the pile to find it again. And when I did, I realized it wasn't just a sermon, it was something else. The handwriting matched the priest's signature from the letter Fr. Elias Grange. Grange? Grange. A final note from him, possibly unfinished. The one page near the end had been marked with a faint ink circle and the words counter circle underlined 3 times. There was a reference to a ritual, elements of protection. Maybe it wasn't clear. Oh, maybe it wasn't clear. The Latin was fragmented, and the diagram seemed incomplete, but I pieced together enough to try it. I waited until night, cleared the living room, pushed the furniture to the edges, and chalked the rough shape of the circle onto the floor. I placed salt where the lines met, as best I could make sense of it. I read the incantation aloud quietly at first, then louder. My voice cracked during the 3rd repetition. By the end of it, my vision had gone blurry and my hands were shaking. I felt like I was on the verge of throwing up.
But then, nothing happened. The room stayed still. No whispers, no cracking walls, no strange movements in the shadows. I sat there for hours, waiting for something to shift. Nothing did. It was the first quiet I'd experienced in days. That night, I slept straight through. No dreams, no voice, just sleep. The next morning, I found blood in the bathroom sink. It was faint, almost diluted, but real. I checked myself over. No cuts, no dried blood in my mouth. The drain wasn't rusted. It wasn't some old residue. It was fresh. I turned the tap on and watched it swirl down. When I stepped outside, I noticed something I hadn't before. Every house in the street, every single one, had a vine growing near the base. Most people probably wouldn't have noticed it. Just one thin strand curling around a pipe or sprouting from a crack in the driveway. But I looked closer. They all curved the same way, all spiraled in the same direction. I opened my notebook and flipped back through the pages. My earliest maps had started warping. The ink was thicker now. The spirals are darker, fuller. The paper almost felt damp in some places, like the lines were still alive, still growing. Even the ones I hadn't touched were changing, reshaping themselves slightly when I looked away. The lines were converging on something, a center point I already knew. The priest's letter said it always returns. He tried fire, salt, and prayer. All of it failed. His letter had survived, but he hadn't. That evening, while I sat at the kitchen table, I heard the voice again. This time I was fully awake. It didn't come from a dream, and it wasn't outside. It was in the room with me, just behind my ear. No warmth this time, no breath. Why would you do that? Then silence. But I could feel something beneath the house, something scraping from underneath the floorboards. It wasn't scraping the flooring, though. The sound was coming from deeper in the earth. It sounded like grinding, like 2 pieces of iron scraping against each other. I packed a bag, the letter, my notes, a flashlight, a map. I took matches, a knife, a jar of salt. I don't know what I thought I'd need, but I knew staying here was no longer an option. Lines were not outward, inward, always toward where I stood. The spirals in my drawings had started looping into themselves like they were folding reality. The well hadn't been whispering, now it was listening, and whatever was at the bottom was finally awake. I was going back. I had to. Not to stop it. I don't know if that's even possible, but I had to see it. I had to know what it wanted, because I think it's always known what I am, and it's been waiting. By the time I left the house and followed the path back toward the clearing, I could feel the air thicker, like a fever pressing against my skin. Every branch seemed bent in slight curves, the fallen needles arranged in arcs I hadn't noticed before, as though the forest itself had been folding itself into spirals while no one was watching. That's pretty sick.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I like the way this story goes.
Yeah, it's definitely, like, this is very well written.
Yeah.
My eyes refused to stay still. Whenever I focused on one tree, the others seemed to bow inward, their shadows stretching like grasping fingers. Somewhere behind me, low and almost swallowed by the wind, came the faint sound of my own breath, repeating a half beat later, too late to be an echo. When I broke through the pines, the clearing felt wrong, emptier than it had any right to be. But Seth was already standing there, near the well, his hands shoved deep into his pockets, his shoulders set like stone. He'd been waiting. He didn't shout at me. He didn't even greet me. He just said my name, flatly, like the word itself was a sentence. And I realized he knew. He must have seen the way I carried myself, duffled strap biting into my shoulder, the way I avoided looking at the stones or wringing the mouth. You're not done with this, he said. And there was a tired fury in his voice that told me he was rehearsed this. Oh my god. He had rehearsed this confrontation. Maybe pacing his house the night before. Maybe staring into the mirror, trying to find the words. I told him everything. I don't even know why, except that I was too far gone to stop myself. I told him about the spirals, the voices, the thing beneath the wall that listened when I thought too hard. The dreams of the woman's whisper curling behind my ear. I confessed it all with the kind of certainty you only hear in lunatics and prophets. Seth stood with his jaw locked, shaking his head every few sentences like he was trying to keep his footing on ground that wouldn't stop shifting. He didn't believe me. He told me it was a stress, sleep deprivation that had always been obsessive, and this was just another spiral of my own making. But when I asked him if he'd seen the cracks in the trees, if he noticed the way the clearing bent through the well, he went silent, too long. And I knew he had. I begged him for help. I told him I couldn't do it alone, that I needed rope, that I needed someone at the surface to anchor me. He swore at me under his breath, called me insane, and said this was going to end in an accident that would ruin us both. But when I started towards the well, without waiting for him, he grabbed my shoulder, hard enough to leave a bruise, and said, "Fine. Fine, we do this my way." We went back to his house and gathered rope. An old coil he used for deer blinds, still smelling faintly of mildew and pine sap. Neither of us spoke much on the walk back. The trees seemed to lean closer, the wind still carrying the faint, offbeat echo of my breathing. When we returned to the clearing, Seth tested the rope, knotting it against the trunk of the pine, tugging it twice as if to reassure himself this was still just physical, just real.
He looped the other end around my waist with a grim efficiency, his face pale, determined. Then he braced himself by the stone lip and said, "Go. But if you tug twice, I'm pulling you up, whether you like it or not." I nodded, though I already knew there would be no pulling me back once I saw what lay beneath. I lowered myself into the well slowly, the stones cold and slick under my palms, the rope creaking faintly with each shift of weight. The circle of daylight above shrank too quickly, and the air carried with it the stench of wet copper, the rot of something animal left in the humid heat. There we go. I could feel breathing down there. Though no air stirred, my hands began to tremble as my boots slid against the wall. Not stone anymore, but something softer. Just enough to give... No, just enough give to make me recoil. I told myself it was moss, just moss. But when I pressed too hard, the wall quivered. and thin tremor rippled through the shaft as though the well itself had flinched.
Yuck.
The rope hissed again. Oh, go on.
As I said, yuck. It was yucky.
The rope hissed against the stone lip above as I went lower. My fingers slick now with whatever clung to the walls. It wasn't moss. The texture was wrong. Too warm, too pliant. Like wet skin stretched thin over bone. When I brushed against it with my knuckles, it flexed away and then settled back, pulsing faintly, as though veins carried something through it in waves. Seth's voice drifted down from above, asking if I was alright, but it sounded muffled, like he was speaking through cloth, and I couldn't bring myself to answer. The stench grew thicker the deeper I went. Acrid,
Acrid, yeah.
acrid, and sweet. The reek of spoiled meat undercut with something medicinal, like iodine. Each breath coated my throat until I could almost taste iron on my tongue. The shaft widened slightly, and the daylight above seemed further away than it should have been, a distant white coin dissolving in the shadow. I steadied myself on the wall, but when my palm flattened against it, the surface was no longer just damp. It was slick, with mucus, sheen that smeared across my skin in strands. Ugh. Yikes.
Yuck.
I almost let go of the rope when something shifted under my hand, a slow ripple moving outward from where I touched it, where I touched, as if the well's insides were listening. The silence below was total, so heavy, I could hear my own pulse in my ears. But threaded through it came a faint, "What in the world is that?"
Oh god. Susurrus? I'm actually gonna look that up real quick. Meaning. Whisper, murmur, or rustling. So,
That's a big word.
yeah.
Jesus, I was not expecting that. Alright, I'm gonna read that part again. But threaded through it came a faint susurrus, wind, water, whispering. Too low, too separate into words. I made the mistake of looking down. The dark was alive with faint glimmers, tiny reflective surfaces, like wet eyes catching what little light bled from above. They were embedded in the walls, opening and closing as though they were lids, twitching in the rhythm of breath. For a moment I couldn't move, my body locked in place between the rope's pull above and the living shaft below. That's when I felt the first brush against my ankle. Light, spider silk. I jerked upward, banging my elbow against the stone, but the touch didn't stop. It was followed by another, and then another, until strands like roots or tendrils were questing upward out of the black, curling around my boots, pasting at the hem of my jeans.
I shouted, finally, wordless and strangled, and Seth hauled on the rope from above, his voice echoing down, sharp and panicked. I scrambled upward, trying to kick free, but the tendrils were stronger than they looked. They wound tighter, dragging at my legs. Their texture not plant-like at all, but more like cords of muscle, slicked with bile. I clawed at them, ripping one free only to feel another coiled tighter, tightening around my calf. The rope strained under the sudden jerk of Seth pulling, each heave wrenching me upward a foot at a time, but the things were climbing faster. They didn't want me alone. Then the rope above lurched, slackened, and screamed against the stone. I twisted to look, heart clamping in my chest, and I saw Seth's silhouette at the rim. His body bent forward as he braced himself. Something had reached him. One of the black tendrils, thick as a wrist, had whipped out from the well's edge and lashed around his arm. His shout crackled at the silence as he tried to wrench free, but three more followed, snapping around his shoulders. His chest, his throat. He dropped the rope and clawed at them, but they dragged him forward with impossible force. I saw his hands scramble at the stone, lip, nails, tearing bloody grooves as he was yanked downward into the dark. His scream lasted only until the tendrils pulled him past the opening, and then it cut off, swallowed whole. The last thing I felt before the rope jerked me upward again was a slack where his strength had been, replaced by a shudder from the well itself. A tremor that rattled through the living walls and into my bones. I climbed blindly, sobbing, slipping on the slick surface, hauling myself hand over hand with raw palms until the circle of daylight grew larger. When I finally rolled over the lip onto the dirt, gasping, the clearing was silent. The rope lay coiled, useless beside me, twitching once as though something below had given it a final tug. I don't remember how long I lay on the ground beside the well, my chest heaving and my face wet with tears I didn't even feel coming. The clearing swayed around me, every tree leaning closer as though to look at what had been taken, and I clawed at the dirt like an upset toddler, whispering Seth's name until my throat tore raw. At some point, instinct drove me stumbling into the woods, my hands cut and tore open as I bumbled through miles of sharp branches and pine cones, my legs giving out every few yards until I crawled through pine needles and mud. I could still feel the rope around my waist, slick with the filth of the shaft. I tore it off, hurling it into the underbrush, as if distance could undo what had happened. I don't remember finding my way home, only that I woke in my bed the next morning with my mother's voice calling the police because Seth hadn't come home.
The search lasted days. Flashlights swept the woods at night. Dogs bayed and strayed at their leashes. And the well stood quietly among the pines, rope still tied neat to the trunk where Seth had anchored it. I stood beside the officers as they peered down into the darkness, my heart pounding so hard I thought I would echo into the shaft and wake whatever was listening. They lowered lights, even a camera on a cable, but the footage showed only slick walls and dripping stone, no flesh, no eyes, no tendrils. They found no trace of Seth, no blood, no torn clothes, nothing. I gave my statement, how we had gone walking, how Seth had gone ahead, how I had turned, and he was gone. They asked me if he'd been drinking, if he'd seemed tired. I told them he had slipped. I told them he had fallen into the well. They lowered more rope, shouting his name into the black, but it returned nothing but hollow echoes. In the end, they wrote it up as an accident, a tragic misstep in the dark woods, the kind of story you tell yourself to sleep at night. His family never forgave me. My own mother stopped meeting my eyes at the dinner table, as if she knew I was keeping something back, but I couldn't bear to ask. The town whispered. I carried the weight in silence, night after night, until even my dreams grew too heavy to bear. Now I am 25. 8 years have passed since that night, and I am writing this because I can no longer pretend. I've lived with the guilt until it hollowed me out, until I see Seth's hands clawing at the stone every time I close my eyes. I know the well is still there, patient and breathing. I know it is not done with me.
That was pretty sick.
That was good. That was very good.
Yeah, this was a really good one.
Yeah, that was.
I liked how it was like a big, you know those plants that the carnivorous plants where they lure bugs in and they can't get out.
The Venus
flytrap.
Venus flytrap.
Not a Venus flytrap. It's more.
Oh, I
it's
think I know
more
what you're talking about.
The
They're called pitcher plants.
pitcher plants. Yeah. And they like lure the bugs in and they fall in and they can't get back out. That's kind of what it reminded me of, but with a well for people, which I think was really cool.
So, the only thing that's kind of bugging me is, why did it take his friend if it wanted him?
I think it saw it could use him to get his friend, and then it could. I guess it only needs one person at a time or something, but maybe it sees that it can get him again later.
But didn't it say that? Here, hang on, let me find it. It said,
It wanted not him alone.
Yeah, but it said at one point that it took more than it took like 2 people or some shit, right?
Missing
Was
kids,
the-
yeah.
Was the main character
I
The
I
what?
think that's my biggest contention. Is the main character a male?
I think so.
I'm assuming it's a male. It seems.
Because at some point there was like mention that it took boys.
Oh,
So what if
that's a
the
good point.
what if the MC's a female?
Yeah, that was never really clarified.
Okay.
We'd have to ask the writer, because if the main character is a female, that makes a lot more sense as to why I wouldn't take her.
Yeah.
But if it's a male, I just find that a little weird. That it like
Yeah.
was kind of luring him in, and then when it literally has him, like
Yeah, like in its trap.
in his mouth, literally,
Yeah.
and it just doesn't take him. It just takes his friend. Like that seems really weird.
Yeah, it's strange.
But so if it was like clarified that the character was a female and it was just trying to go through that character to get the friend, then that makes a lot more sense. But like it just didn't really make sense in that kind of situation.
Yeah. It was just a little confusing, but
But that's it.
overall, I mean,
Yeah, that's
yeah,
honestly
that's
it.
pretty much the only problem. I mean, throwing the curveball, giving me the curveball sentence with how sexual it got. I was
Dude,
not expecting that to
it
any
got
degree.
it got a little sexual there. I was just saying.
It did. That's
It got a
funny.
little sexual. I wasn't expecting that.
I don't know if you could tell, but it caught me off guard. I had to like do a double take.
Yeah,
Yeah, I got that.
had like that tone shift there for a second. I was like, what the hell? But like they did say that it was this girl's looking for someone to like keep her company, so like, or like the woman. So like
I mean,
it kind of makes sense in a way, I guess. Like you could kind of play into that. But again, I don't know if this is a boy or a girl. So
yeah, that's
What to
the
ask.
biggest problem for this
yeah,
story. Other than that, it's perfectly fine. It's very it felt very heavily inspired by Uzumaki, the anime and manga,
is that the one with
with
the
all
snails?
the spiral duck. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that actually. Yeah.
I kept hearing spirals, and I'm like, this just reminds me of Uzumaki.
Yeah, he probably took some inspiration from that. There's another thing I was thinking of that it reminded me of, and I can't really remember what it's called. I don't know.
It's like a show or something.
It's a movie. I don't know. I watch too many movies. It's something I've seen before, but it's a little similar in some aspects. There was some parts that kind of like reminded me of Paranorman a little bit that I thought was kind of cool, but
I don't think I've seen the movie.
you've never seen Paranorman?
think I've-
I love
I don't
Paranorman.
think
I don't think I have either.
You guys need to watch Paranorman.
Oh, speaking of which, Ben, I've got a problem with you.
Uh-oh.
You've never seen Scary Movie?
No,
No.
we've never seen Scary
You
Movie.
saw? Oh, you watched the video, damn.
Yeah, I was like, what?
Yeah,
I haven't seen a lot of shit.
we just watched the haunted house movies, with the Wayans brothers.
Yeah,
Because he's never seen
Watch
those.
those.
So we gotta do Scary Movie next with him.
Okay.
I was very upset hearing that. I was like, oh, come on.
I know. He hasn't seen a lot of movies, man. Like, I'll be sitting there talking, and I'll bring up a movie, and he's just like, what's that? I'm like, bro, like, come on, man. He's out here watching little anime instead of watching actual movies.
I've watched plenty of movies. I just
Clearly not enough.
Not enough, dude.
Uh,
Not enough. You gotta watch some more, dude.
It's true. I watched a lot of movies when I was younger, or a lot more movies when I was younger.
Anyways,
Yeah.
we should probably call it there. You guys don't want to hear us
Yeah.
yap about movies, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But for the writer, if you make it this far, reach out to me if you want to clarify anything for us or for me. Just because I'm a little curious as to if the character was a female or a male, because that is kind of important in where the
Yeah.
story went in the end. As
Yeah.
Penty pointed out, that kind of felt like a big aspect that she only took boys. So if the main character was a female, then that just makes way more sense. But if the main character was a male, then I'm kind of like a little lost on that part. But
At that point, she should have just taken both of them.
yeah, that's what I mean. They should have just taken both of them, and this could have just been like well, I guess how would you know then? I don't know. But yeah, that's about all we have for today. That was a great read. Thank you to
Yeah.
Penty for reading with us. He did a great job.
Sir,
Did.
You honestly
I had
did
a couple strokes, but we're
No,
still
you-
good.
You honestly did.
It's part of it.
You did a good
Yeah.
job. You did, like that was you read
Agreed.
very very clear, and smooth. So that it just takes practice, man. Like we still mess up all the time.
Yeah,
Well,
I was
I'll
struggling
be-
today.
I'll be recording my own little sessions here and there. So
Yeah, well,
Sweet.
let us know whenever you want on too. Like we're more than happy to have you here to read too.
Of course.
But anyways,
Sounds like a plan, boys.
that's it. If you guys made it this far, if you want to like or subscribe, you know, all that YouTube stuff.
Comment.
they
But
better like and subscribe.
They have to.
They
All
need
right.
to.
all right, guys. Bye bye.
See ya.
Goodbye.